Hey, it's Rick Kettner here, and in this video, we're going to focus on how to beat the competition in business. We're going to cover 3 different strategies that you can use to separate your business or your brand from the competition and become more profitable in the process. If you're interested in learning more about how to build and grow your business, I recommend that you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and that you turn on notifications so that you don't miss out on future videos. But with that said, let's focus on how to beat the competition. And before I dive into the 3 different strategies, I just want to talk a little bit about the mindset involved in focusing on the competition. Because as entrepreneurs, I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of really focusing on what rival brands are doing and trying to outperform or outcompete them, create better products, create better services, better marketing campaigns, and just get into head-to-head fierce competition somehow in an effort to win or to somehow beat them. And yet, generally speaking, that approach just diminishes profits, it often stalls out growth, and it doesn't really lead to what I think we want to achieve. We're naturally competitive by human nature, but it's not necessarily the best approach. And so a recurring theme in this video is actually going to be finding ways to separate ourselves from the competition. And to borrow language from Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim and Renee Maborn, we want to focus on making the competition irrelevant. We want our success to be based on what we're doing and how we're creating value for customers instead of how we stack up with how another business is operating. So that's going to be a recurring theme as we go through these strategies. But let's dive into the list. The first one is redefine the market around your strengths. It's incredibly valuable if you can find a way to redefine a market category around your strengths rather than playing into what your competitors are doing. And this is really valuable because if you can create a direct association between a product category and your brand, it gives you a massive advantage over your competitors. I'll give you a few examples and then I'll explain exactly how this works and how you can achieve this. When you think of a major product category or a major market like fast food, most people's brains immediately go to McDonald's. Fast food, McDonald's. McDonald's owns that category. And likewise, coffee shops, Starbucks, electric cars, Tesla, streaming television, Netflix, ride sharing, Uber. The list goes on. And what all these companies tend to have in common is that they were the first brand to introduce a product or service or a solution to that product category. They essentially created that product category in the minds of customers. And so once this connection is made, once people think of this category as being owned by this product, it's incredibly difficult to break in and actually overtake their position. In fact, it's almost impossible. And so this is a mistake that a lot of businesses make. They see an existing market leader and they think, okay, how can I beat them? How can I win? How can I dominate that category? Now, this whole idea is something that I learned about in the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Ries and Jack Trout. It's one of my all-time favorite marketing books. And they address this idea in the book. They talk about the law of leadership, which is what I just described. And the reason why it's so powerful is that it's better to be first than it is to be better. I love the way that they put that. It's better to be first than it is to be better, because once you make this connection, even if somebody else comes along and they arguably have a slightly better product or even quite a bit better product, most consumers remain loyal to the brand that they first associated with the category. And it's not so much a matter of loyalty as it's a matter of they truly believe that this is the dominant brand. This is the leader in the marketplace, and they remain loyal to that brand. So as they talk about in the book, what you want to do if you're in a position where you're not the leading brand in your category, you want to create a new category, and hence the title of this strategy. You want to redefine the market around your strengths. You want to create a new category that is different enough from the existing category that people are open to a new brand. They no longer associate this new category. It's different enough that they don't link it with that category or the category leader over there. So that's really what you want to do. You want to find a new category that plays to your strengths. And a really important point here is it's not just a matter of niching down or specializing. So for example, an example I've used in the past is McDonald's owns fast food, so another brand might come in and try to dominate gourmet fast food or healthy fast food or Mexican fast food. That's definitely a promising approach, and you can be successful with that approach. But what you ideally want to do is actually create a category that has the potential to eventually overtake the current category. So they're gonna continue to own that category. You're just gonna choose a category that ends up being bigger in the long run. So a classic example of this is just looking at the history of social media. Originally, MySpace was dominating the market. They were the first ones to really go fairly mainstream, not totally mainstream, but fairly mainstream with the idea of a social network. Facebook came along and they redefined the category. It was no longer just social networking. It was social networking with real names, real people, real identities. So they focused on college campuses. I think in the beginning, you actually had to have a .edu email address at that college in order to even join. And they slowly rolled out to more and more colleges. I think they eventually added schools, and then they went completely open and eventually opened it up to everybody. But they redefined the category. It wasn't just another social media network. They didn't try to play into the strengths of MySpace. Instead, they redefined the category, and most importantly, they selected a category that eventually overtook the other category. The real identity network became more valuable, and it became bigger than the anonymous, I guess you could say, category that was MySpace. And then this history repeated itself. Instagram came along, and they didn't play into Facebook's strengths. They didn't do the same old thing. They, intentional or not, and I don't know that this is necessarily a thought that went through their minds, but rather than try to compete with Facebook, they created an entirely new approach, which was a mobile-first approach to social networking. They focused on the iPhone, eventually Android, and they eventually added a very basic web interface, but their entire approach was mobile-first. And Mark Zuckerberg realized that this was an existential threat to his business because there was a very real chance, because he believed that the future of social media was going to be on mobile. He realized that left to their own devices, Instagram would almost certainly dominate that category and eventually supplant Facebook, as mobile was going to become and has since become the dominant way that people interact with social networks. So he spent something like $1 billion to buy Instagram. Everybody thought he was crazy at the time. It proved to be one of the best decisions in all of tech business. And he slowed their growth, I guess you could say in some ways, pivoted Facebook hard to overtake and become a mobile-first approach. And Facebook has continued to dominate. And to this day, many people, I'm reading or listening to podcasts recently about how Mark has actually tried to slow down Instagram and make sure Facebook is still the dominant brand. But you could look back at this example and see how not only is it redefining the category, you're trying to find a category that actually has the potential to overtake the previous category. And like I say, you can definitely have success by specializing, carving out your own niche, going smaller. There's nothing wrong with that approach. But if the idea here is to beat the competition, this is one way to not play their game, redefine the market around your strengths, and eventually overtake them. Okay, next up, number 2, look for opportunities to create value innovation. The idea here is to break the classic trade-off between either adding value to your product or service or decreasing cost. This is how most businesses compete. And this was actually an idea that I first learned of when reading Blue Ocean Strategy by W. Chan Kim and Renee Maborn. The idea behind value innovation is to pursue both of these things at the same time. You want to add value and simultaneously reduce costs. So this isn't necessarily technology innovation. It's often mistaken for pursuing technology for technology's sake. Value innovation, the idea here, the emphasis is on value. You're innovating within value. You're delivering more for less. And often this does involve making use of technology or making use of some kind of a paradigm shift. But often this is a result of being hyper-focused on what your customers want and maybe the shortcomings of the current market solutions, and then looking for opportunities either by studying other businesses in completely other markets and how they're addressing customer needs, or by looking for major technology innovations like the introduction of the internet or streaming video, or more modern examples and things out into the future today would be virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, cloud computing, which is probably even more in the moment right now. All of these are examples of things that you want to be on the lookout. So going back to the theme of this video, if all you're doing is focused on what the competition is doing and studying their every move and trying to keep up or slightly incrementally get ahead of what they're doing, then you're very likely to miss out on these kinds of leaps. And so instead of focusing on the competition, you want to focus on customers and understanding their evolving needs and any friction or challenges or problems or reasons why they might be unsatisfied with current solutions. And then you want to pair that with a deep understanding of emerging trends or alternative approaches to doing business so that you can look for opportunities to create value innovation, which is effectively a leap in value for buyers. So an example of this, going back a little ways, I co-founded a business about 15 plus years ago with Jared Falk. We set out to help people learn how to play the drums through video lessons. At the time, we started actually with online, we pivoted to physical products, and then we came back to online, long story short. But the idea was we wanted to help people learn how to play the drums. So we set out to create step-by-step online video lessons, multi-camera angles, step-by-step instruction, slow motion footage, whatever it took to really help people learn. We built a massive library of these lessons. We eventually added on-demand streaming video where we could answer people's questions in real time. We added community forums, play-along songs, a whole bunch of things. But more importantly, before we launched any of this, the traditional way that people learned how to play the drums was by taking private one-on-one lessons with an instructor. You would spend anywhere from $80 to $120 per month to meet weekly for either a half hour or an hour, and you would learn how to play. And then you'd go home and practice, and you'd come back the next week and try to find where you went wrong and try to continue to improve and get instruction. And so this was $80 to $120 a month. Well, we created this online alternative and eventually turned it into a subscription service for $30 a month. Arguably a much, much bigger value, a better experience for less. And one thing that's really important to note here, we didn't set out to create a one-to-one replacement, right? For many people, especially for kids, I think you can make a case that private instruction is still actually a superior experience. They need that mentorship, they need that hands-on training. But for the overwhelming majority of customers out there, I think it's fair to say that the online experience is a massive leap in value. They're getting way more and they're spending less for it. And that's what you want to be looking for. And we were far from the first to ever think of this idea. This is a very popular model, and many industries have been transformed by something like this. Netflix, for example, has done it on a more mainstream basis. But the idea here is you just simply want to look for ways to better serve your customers. They have this need. In this case, they wanted to learn how to play the drums, and in many ways, they wanted to have a community, whether with local musicians or otherwise. So we served both those needs with an online community approach to learning how to play the drums with step-by-step videos, and we created a leap in value for buyers. So that's a really important concept. And like I say, it's all about focusing on your customers and then keeping an eye out for how you can provide better value. And I think a common mistake that we often make as entrepreneurs is we become obsessed with our business model and how we do things today. And one key important thing regarding this strategy is to always be focused on how can you simply serve customers better? Because between overly focused on competition and being overly focused on the way things are done today and how you currently make money, those are two things that tend to trip up businesses when it comes to really aggressively pursuing new and better ways to create value for customers. So if you can set aside what the competition is doing, if you can set aside the idea that the way you make money today is not the only way to make money, and you just focus on what customers actually need and new and innovative ways to deliver on that, then you can create true value innovation and separate yourself from the competition. And in many ways, value innovation tends to help with the last step, redefine the market around your strengths. Because in this case, when we developed what is now known as Drumeo, we redefined the category from drum lessons to online drum lessons. And I've since sold my stake in that business, but to this day, they remain the dominant player in this new category of online drum lessons. And so in many ways, when you create value innovation, you have a very real opportunity to redefine the market and to become the dominant brand in that new space. Okay, let's move on. Number 3, make use of uncontested marketing channels. It's really easy to get stuck in a rut. In fact, entire industries often get stuck in a rut when it comes to how they go about attracting and converting customers to their products and services. So the idea here is to, again, separate yourself from the competition. Look for different ways to attract customers. A mistake that we often make as entrepreneurs is we enter some new market, and even if there isn't direct competition, we look at similar businesses and we decide, okay, here's how they advertise. That must be the best way to sell these kinds of products or services. And so we just dive into those strategies, and if they work, great, we focus on those and we're done. But there's a huge opportunity to actually pursue completely unconventional or uncontested marketing channels rather than just doing what everybody else is doing. Because everybody else is doing one thing, and that tends to make it hyper competitive. If you can move and separate yourself from the competition and focus on entirely different marketing channels, you have a very real opportunity to stand out in the marketplace. And I think a great example of this is Tesla. They entered the auto industry. Every other brand in the auto industry relies heavily on brand marketing through TV commercials, online ads, magazine ads, radio ads. It's all brand-based advertising. And Tesla, to the best of my knowledge, relies on zero paid ads. They don't have any paid advertising to the best of my knowledge. And instead, they focus on things like unconventional PR. I think it's fair to say Elon Musk is an unconventional PR machine, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, sometimes it gets pretty ugly. But he generates a lot of press for the business in general. They also rely on having unique products and doing big product launches like the Model X with its falcon wing doors and, of course, the recent Cybertruck with its iconic and polarizing design. And then they also rely heavily on word-of-mouth referral. They have a very loyal customer base who are super enthusiastic about what they sell, and so they rely heavily on word of mouth. And there are probably some other channels that they rely on as well. But the point here, not necessarily to copy what they're doing, but to recognize they entered an industry where everybody else was following the same game plan. They all did the same thing. They all fought over the same customers with similar products in similar ways. And Tesla came in and said, we're not going to play that game. We're going to look for an entirely new approach. And this was almost certainly a result of needing to have a different approach because, as best as I understand it, their margins are a lot slimmer, and so paid advertising wasn't really a realistic option for them, nor was having the big lot of vehicles like so many other dealerships for traditional automakers have. So they were forced to innovate. They were forced to go in a different direction. And sometimes this really pays off. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating you ignore the tried, true, and proven strategies because in many cases, there is a reason why those are used. They might be highly effective, but you want to consider alternative approaches because, again, it's all about separating yourself from the competition. And by using uncontested or different marketing channels, you can really separate yourself. Now, I recently published a video on 33 different ways that you can get more customers. That video was largely inspired by Traction, this book by Gabriel Weinberg and Justin Mares. This is a book that I recommend whenever I talk to startups that are overly focused on product development or building out their business and aren't focused enough on attracting customers. This is a very common trap for entrepreneurs, one that I've got pulled into many, many times. It's very exciting to work on the product, and it's often we tend to leave the marketing to the end. But this is a book I recommend for those people. But it also happens to cover 19 different marketing channels, and these can apply to any business. You don't have to be a startup. And so I created that video covering 33 different ways to get customers, and it's far from exhaustive. There are many great resources out there. But what you want to do is, even if you're in a well-established market, you already have marketing channels, you want to go down a list like this and explore other marketing channels that you might pursue. And you want to go down one by one and say, okay, if we had to use this one marketing channel, how would we do it? If it was the only option we had to sell our products and services, how would we do it? And then you move on to the next. If we had to use this marketing channel, how would we do it? And this is an idea actually from Traction. The bullseye framework in that book recommends that you go through and brainstorm ideas for each and every potential marketing channel. That's step number one. Step number two is to select 3 or 4, maybe 5 of the most promising channels. Step 3 is to perform inexpensive tests just to see, are they effective? Do they seem promising? And then step 4 is to select one new channel that seems most promising based on all your research, based on your initial inexpensive tests, and then focus on that one channel and see if it has potential for your business. Anyway, those are 3 different strategies that you can use to separate yourself from the competition. I'll quickly recap them here. You can redefine the market around your strengths, look for opportunities to create value innovation, and make use of uncontested marketing channels. The recurring theme here, focus on your customers, focus on separating yourself from competitors, and look to redefine the market based on your strengths and focus on what you can do to provide more value for customers. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button here on YouTube to let me know. And of course, that also helps YouTube promote the channel or promote the video out to more people here on the platform. And also, if you're interested in learning more about how to build and grow your business, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss out on future videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.